Hey, welcome to Life After Addiction and Indictment. My name is Steve Cloward, and I've got a special guest today, a gentleman who's got quite the story. We all, in life, we all have our stories. Nobody's immune. But I met this gentleman, J.D. McCabe, through a good friend of mine, and we talked for a little bit. And, I thought, my goodness, I thought my story was crazy, but there's so much that he's gone through that I think really has a lot of value and can really impact those if you'll listen to some of the things that he was able to learn through this incredible, painful process. So, JD, I want to welcome you.
Steve, good morning, and thank you for having me. And I also want to take the opportunity to make sure we thank Nate Bailey. Nate has opened many doors for me. So, I'm blessed and fortunate that Nate helped me to get connected with you as well. So, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate you being here. Nate's not only a good friend, but he's been a mentor of mine that's had a big impact. So, yeah, I appreciate him as well. Well, let's get right into it. I received your book, The Third Gift, got it right here, and read, I'm about a chapter and a half into it, but we discussed it on the phone quite a bit. And I just want to talk about a little bit about, your story, kind of your marriage. Maybe we start there, and kind of what your life, your normal quote normal life was, and then what were the things that started taking place that drove you down the path that you ended up in a psychiatric ward.
Yeah. The first 17 years I would say were normal, and I would use normal in quotation, but it's the only reference point that I had. That was my only marriage. And I think we had a very blessed life. I was gainfully employed, was fortunate to make a nice living. She had the ability to stay home and raise our two children. And, so I would describe it as very normal. We rarely fought, and I would describe it as stable. But it was about 17 years into the marriage is when I believe some things that had transpired in her life with the passing of her father that sent her over the edge and kind of released some of the demons that she had been hiding for years. As I go through the journey, I would ultimately discover a lot of deception, a lot of betrayal. So in 2010, she subtly began to accuse me of infidelity. She would make her way into my office if I wasn't traveling for work. I worked from home, and she would, on occasion pop in and ask to see my emails, my personal emails, my work emails, my phone. Her therapist at the time, had suggested that I was perhaps cheating on her.
Wow, I never met that suggestion.
Yeah, I never met the therapist, so I don't know if it's fact based or not. I had offered to go to meet with her therapist to have a conversation about it, and lo and behold, it turns out supposedly that therapist decided to stay home with her children and was no longer going to practice.
So did this behavior, it didn't manifest until her dad passed? And
no.
Other than that, everything was pretty normal, right?
Everything was pretty normal. So we very rarely fought. We had very few disagreements. I would say it was fairly smooth sailing. Wasn't perfect, of course, but it wasn't as turbulent as it became. So, in 2010, the subtle accusations began. And then in the spring of 2014 is when things really accelerated she not only started accusing me of infidelity on a more increased frequency, but then it was drug addiction. And so it was in the spring of 2014, and the stars lined up nicely for her. So it was in the spring of 2014 that I had started working out. Nothing intense, just 3 days a week, lifting some weights. I shifted from Coke to Diet Coke. And when you know it, Steve, in less than 6 weeks, I lost 35 pounds.
Just out of the blue, that started.
Just out of the blue. I mean, I used to go 240, 245. I saw the weight coming off. And that would only, of course, and what I mean by the stars lining up perfectly, that would only fuel her further accusations about infidelity. You're working out, you're getting in shape, you're losing weight.
What's your motivation?
What's your motivation here? And then her mother, who I never had a crossword with in 23 years that I knew that woman. Then her mother got in on the act.
Well, at the bottom of your book, it states my dance with the devil and her mother.
Yeah. So she played a prominent role in helping to drive me into the ground. And it was in it was, as you can see on the back cover of the book, it was in the summer of 2014, after 3 pretty tumultuous months and a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of accusations. And then she also started to alienate my daughter from me in the spring of 2014. But it was on a beach trip in the summer of 2014 that my now ex-mother-in-law threatened to kill me. So just out of the blue, standing at a counter in a house, beach house that she graciously rented for us, just looked at me and with death and anger in her eyes, just basically said, "If you put your hands on my daughter, I'll kill you."
And there was
And
nothing that brought that up. I mean, there was no tension, no argument that happened.
No,
Just
I had never had a conversation with her before that beach trip about anything. So whatever conversation she was having with my wife behind my back was fueling all that was going on. And after I got over the initial shock, so she not only threatened to kill me, but then she suggested I was addicted to porn, and then she said, perhaps you're addicted to drugs, and there was something going on in your childhood, perhaps, that has pushed you to this point. And I was just beyond shocked.
wow.
And the only thing I could come up with, Steve, is I asked her at the time, once I composed myself a little bit, as I said, what have I ever done to lead you to believe that I would hurt your daughter? And she had to pause for a few minutes and said, well, she told me that you recently got angry and shook the dishwasher rack and broke it. And I said, we have been, having some discussions, some heated discussions recently. And there was one occasion where I did shake the dishwasher rack. I didn't break it, but I did shake it. And so, my wife spun that into, he's got anger issues and I'm afraid of him. And she would later instill that fear into our daughter. And so that was a crazy summer. The problem that I had was that I told nobody. I kept it all to myself. I come from a large family. I have a large professional network. People started noticing the weight loss and thought, hey man, you're looking great. Well, then the 35 pounds went to 40, went to 45, went to 50.
Let me stop you right there for a second.
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting, but
no.
This may be helpful for people that are listening, because I've experienced some things in my life and relationships. And so you mentioned that, you held everything in, you didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that? Positive, negative, or otherwise?
Well, I think the negative, there's a lot of positive. The positives ultimately would show through, but I think that the initial negative is you just become isolated. You become emotionally isolated. And when you've got 2 or 3 people coming at you and essentially, telling you what a piece of shit you are, you begin to believe it. And you focus inward and you look and you really start splitting hairs with yourself and start looking at things that you may have done in the past that would cause the foundation of trust in the marriage to crumble, because that was her mantra, was that she could never trust me from day one.
But you had never given her any reason not to, correct?
Well, and again, I'm honest about it in the book. Early on in the marriage, there was a situation in 2001. So she reached back 14, 15 years at the time. I was on a business trip in New Orleans and I drank way too much.
Uh-huh.
And instead of simply saying to her that I drank too much, I created a little fabrication that I had food poisoning. I would later come clean with her that very same day, and would let her know that, I stayed out way too late, took in a little too much of what New Orleans had to offer. And, I apologized to her and I told her, it would never happen again. And it never did. And then I've always battled for years with cigarettes, smoking. And so there were on occasions where I'd hide the cigarettes from her and the kids, and she would lean on that as well. So she said, you could never be honest about your smoking. You lied to me about drinking. I could never trust you. And so she beat me with an emotional hammer with that. And I started looking at that and started really thinking, okay, maybe it was your fault. Maybe that's why there was no trust in the marriage.
Well, I've seen in several relationships, some close to me, that, and then I'm not condoning lying or hiding things, because that's not wise at all.
Right.
But when that starts to happen, it's usually because we're afraid or worried about the reaction, when there shouldn't be there shouldn't be any negative fallout for just being honest if you're smoking, or just being honest if you happen to drink too much. It's the fallout of then where's it going to be taken, I think, is what happens in our head. And that's one of the things I focus on a lot through my journey, and what I've experienced is the power and really positive or going into the darkness starts right between our ears. And so
Yeah.
as you continue on, the high level I have of your story, there's no doubt why I can see where you ended up where you did, because you were getting pounded and manipulated and just crazy stuff. It's almost like, I'm curious to hear there's actually a conspiracy going on, because it sure seems like it. So apologize for interrupting. Continue on.
No. So again, I started to feel emotionally broken in this, and especially after the death threat and after the accusations of addiction to porn and drugs, which of course none of it was factual, none of it was true. But I was never afforded the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with her mother to find out, what is really fueling all this.
Yeah.
And so she began to shut down and distance herself from me as well, after, again, a wonderful relationship for 23 years. But it was in the fall. Again, I kept all this to myself over the summer. So the negative to it is you become, emotionally isolated.
Right.
The positives when I finally let people in and share my story after I ended up in a psychiatric facility. Two of my brothers came to town, even though I implored them that, there's no need for you to come. Things are fine. That was my stance. And they're like, no, we're coming. And I thank God every day that they did. So
Yeah.
they began to see with their own eyes what I failed to see, that she had set me up and she put me in there. And so I ended up in a psychiatric facility. I was misdiagnosed with bipolar 2 through a family practitioner who, in less than 2 minutes, with his back to me, involuntarily committed me. So he said, it sounds like what you're dealing with is bipolar 2. And if you don't go to such and such facility, I'll have you involuntarily committed. So I ended up seeing a family practitioner throughout the summer because of the increased weight loss. Again, it went from 45 to 50 to 60. And I started having some physical symptoms, intestinal issues. I started having some tingling in my fingers and in my toes, some neck pain, some dizzy spells. And I was thinking there's something physically going wrong with me that's, maybe causing me to have these alleged mood issues.
So
So I
it's
was
getting
looking.
so bad that you're starting to believe that I could actually have bipolar 2, right? Or whatever.
I started to take on the description that you had for me. So I never accepted the fact that I had bipolar 2, but I thought, well, maybe there are some things with my mood. And so, I reached way back to my parents and to the way that my mom, rest her soul, could be at times. I thought, well, maybe as I'm advancing in age here a little bit, maybe I have developed a little bit of a mood issue. So I only accepted that part for a short period of time. But so I saw this family practitioner, and when he involuntarily committed me, it was a follow-up appointment for my weight loss, for some enzymes that were off. I had white blood cell counts that were significantly elevated. I had another enzyme called creatine phosphokinase that was through the roof. And that is indicative of stroke, heart attack, crushing muscle injury. I had none of those. So they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And it was that weekend that she had called the cops on me. So she just really beat me into the ground. And so by the time I saw him on a Monday afternoon, I was just hollowed out. And his question to me that led to the involuntary commitment was, if you lose your family, what will you do? And all I said to him was, I don't know what I will do. My family was everything to me. And so he gave me a little white piece of paper to take that says, I think I might hurt myself.
So he used that to twist and act like you said.
Yeah.
Who knows? I'll probably kill myself.
Yeah. But there was no suicidal ideation. I wasn't
Right.
thinking of ending my life. But yeah, so that was in the fall of 2014, and I ended up staying in the marriage. Rightfully, wrongfully, I ended up staying in the marriage for another 6 or 7 months, and that was a living hell. I mean, things only got worse when I got out of the psychiatric hospital, and so there was a lot of back and forth in the marriage. We're going to get separated. We're going to stay together, and then in the summer of 2015, after we had separated, it was the third gift that was revealed. So I think the title is very timely. The third gift was a revelation that she made between our attorneys that opened my eyes to the fact that, okay, so she accused me of giving her an incurable STD. And it was at that point, as we're sitting, with our mediators, she's in one room, I'm in another room. It was it truly is a gift, because God smacked me across the face and said, son, your marriage is over. So being in the pharmaceutical field, in the medical field for 30 years, I had the knowledge to be able to go look at her medical claims and her pharmacy claims. And I spent hours and hours and hours looking at 5 years worth. I never realized, Steve, what I had access to through our insurance company.
Yeah.
I would call them to validate some of this information. They're like, sir, where are you getting this from? How do you have access to her medical claims and pharmacy claims? I said, I'm the primary card holder.
Yep.
So what I found was that everything she was accusing me of doing, she was actually doing.
That is a huge, huge lesson right there.
Yeah.
Because, as human beings, our insecurities, whatever they may be, when we're pointing the fingers, like they say, if you got one finger pointing over at that person, how many are pointing back at you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
our
So it was a
insecurity
huge,
can manifest by accusing other people of the things we're doing or do, or
it
insecure
was a
of.
huge emotional lift for me. I mean,
Wow.
I began to be able to finally restore my identity a little bit as a man and as a father, certainly no longer a husband. But yeah, I not only uncovered the fact that, she had every STD out there, going back to 2010, and I only had access to records back to 2010 because I had changed employers. But I also discovered that she had an addiction to prescription pain medication, or not pain medication, excuse me, amphetamines.
Really?
Yeah. So I discovered every month, the first time I opened her pharmacy claims, it just took me 3 seconds to open it up. And I look and I see that she had pharmacy claims every month dating back 5 years, Steve.
Oh my goodness.
They were marked private. So I couldn't see the medication.
Really?
Yeah. And initially I thought, based on some of my early discoveries, I thought, well, these must be her medications for all her STDs.
Yeah.
At this point, I had no knowledge of the STDs. I learned a ton. I spent a ton of time on the CDC website learning everything about syphilis and gonorrhea and chlamydia and herpes and the symptoms and the treatments. And because I had to match that up to what I was seeing in her medical claims and in her prescriptions. But I did notice 2 every month marked private, got to the right person at our insurance company and said, I want to know what these are, and I want to know who prescribed them. I said, I'm paying all of her medical bills, and I deserve to know what they are. So I had to dig through that, the whole 5-year list. But towards the tail end of our marriage, it was a psychiatrist that was writing whatever she wanted.
Really?
So she was addicted to Adderall XR. And I would later discover in 2011 and 2012, she used our kids to fill
Scripts in their names?
600 days worth.
Holy crap.
And to make matters even worse, or even more interesting, as you read the book, it was the same family practitioner that had involuntarily committed me that allowed her to refill the prescriptions in our kids' names.
Was there anything going on between those two, or what? I mean,
some people believe that. So the book
that guy, yeah, he's putting a lot of risk.
Yeah, some people believe that there was maybe something going on. Folks that have read the book said, well, perhaps she was sleeping with him.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And I would also discover as we moved through our journey that she was writing letters to him behind my back, setting the stage for the involuntary commitment. The day, 2 days before he involuntarily committed me, I found a letter in my medical records. So we subpoenaed my medical records. We subpoenaed her medical records. I found a letter in our medical records that she had written the day before I was involuntarily committed to him.
What kind of doctor gets involved in that kind of stuff? There's got to be something that just is hard to make sense of, isn't it?
Yeah. And so she not only wrote it to him, but she also wrote it to my psychiatrist. So she was setting me up every step of the way. And I'll never forget, ever, the day that we left that family practitioner's office and we were headed to this facility where I was to be, involuntarily committed. She's standing in the parking lot. She's got her hands to the sky in the form of prayer.
I read that, yep.
Thanking God that we finally have answers.
And trying to tell you, now I can help you. Now I can
help you. And we don't have to call it bipolar. We can call it a watermelon. She literally used those words.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I'm here to help you, and I will stand by you to get through this.
Well, in the book, or what's her motive? I mean, is it to end up divorced and getting all that she can out of it, or I mean,
Yeah. I think her motive, and I will never know.
just guilt? I mean, something's
She
man.
will never. I haven't talked. I have no communication with her. I haven't spoken with her in 3 years, and sadly, our kids no longer have a relationship with her. She's never going to own what she did. She's got borderline personality disorder. She's got, narcissistic personality disease disorder, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, well, that's sad.
Um, she wanted out of the only thing I can wrap my head around, Steve, is she wanted out of the marriage, but it would fly in the face of everything that she supposedly stood for, because her
Yeah.
mom would often preach family is everything. The family unit is everything.
Uh-huh.
She came from a divorced home. And that was part of the triggers for her too, is for her borderline personality disorder is, she was abandoned, if you will, by her father when she was 2 years old. Her father, came out of the closet and acknowledged that he was, homosexual, and that marriage was over. So I talk a lot about that in the book. I really believe
Yeah.
that when she reconciled with him for 5 years towards the end of his life, and she had to make the decision to take him off life support, that sent her over the edge.
Wow.
And I think it was the guilt from the time that she lost. She was estranged from her father for 10 years. And I think it was the guilt of that estrangement that pushed her to the pills, to fill the void that sadly our family couldn't fill for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of twists and turns in the book. There absolutely was a conspiracy, but I think that she was looking for a way out, but the ability to save face at the same time.
Yeah, it's almost like as she was pushing this agenda on you to think you're crazy,
Yeah,
she's going crazy. It's like,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. You're the drug addict, and she told our kids, and again, when I was estranged from my daughter for 2 years, alienated from her, she came back into my life after we had separated, and I was living in an apartment. It was actually 5 years ago, March 2nd, that she came back into my life. And yeah, is then she started opening up that, mom was telling me that, you were in the psychiatric facility because you're a drug addict and you were depressed, but you denied doing drugs, but you tested positive for drugs, which is not true. I mean, they
right.
did a battery of drug tests on me, and I had
They did
3
hair follicle and stuff, it sounded like, right? They went really deep.
Yeah, my psychiatrist did that. One of the first appointments, he's like, I want to see if this is contributing to your mood disorder. And so he did a hair and nail sample and what they call a look back drug test, and found nothing. And so I've never had a drug problem. I don't have a drug problem. But
Right.
so you can imagine the emotional weight that was lifted when I realized, oh my God, she's projected all of this on me, and damn near killed me. Damn
Yeah.
near killed me.
Well, it had to emotionally and mentally
Yeah.
kill you,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, not to skip too far ahead, but we ultimately, once I was separated and out of the house and continuing to see some specialists to figure out what's going on with my, enzymes, because they tested me for leukemia. They tested me for early on stage of Parkinson's disease. I mean, I had some painful tests done looking at, muscle atrophy and that kind of thing. And
uh-huh.
ultimately they would discover that I was chronically exposed to arsenic.
Are you kidding?
No.
Wow.
So they ultimately, a liver specialist did a hair and nail sample there too, and identified that I was chronically exposed to arsenic.
Is that similar to I can't remember which it is, but there's one chemical, that is easy to hide. I can't remember where I've seen it, probably a Dateline or something like that, where they put in your Gatorade or whatever. And it's what additive is it for a vehicle? Is it antifreeze? I think it's
Antifreeze, yeah.
Yeah, so is
Antifreeze.
that similar? I mean, so you're being given something and
Yeah, it's odorless, it's tasteless. It's a powder, and I will firmly believe that she was putting it in my protein powder.
mixing.
When I had started working out in the spring of 2014, under the advisement of my son, I would take whey protein after I worked out, 100% whey protein.
Yeah.
But she would pull that big jug out of the cupboard and she would look at it. She'd read the label, and she'd accuse me, ironically, of putting something in there. she would say, I think you're putting something in your protein powder.
Wow.
She went that far with the projections.
Yeah.
And as the weight continued to come off and the wedding ring wouldn't fit right, there was an occasion, I don't think I talk about it in the book, but there was an occasion that I was doing some yard work and the ring fell off my finger and I ultimately found it, but I remember telling her, look, I can't find my ring. I can't find my wedding ring. She went ballistic. She went ballistic. Why is it not on your finger? Why are you not wearing it? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, because it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So anyhow, So,
Jeez.
but there's light at the end of the tunnel, and the light at the end of the tunnel was the clarity that she provided me and the ability to kind of see, to see that everything she was accusing me of doing, she was actually doing. So.
Wow, unreal. The kids obviously now are doing okay and things are good.
Yeah, they're doing great. So they're now 22 and 26, and my daughter's getting ready to graduate from college. And mom didn't go to her high school graduation. She moved away to Florida, and she won't be at her college graduation either. But they text a little bit every now and then, but there's essentially no communication between her and the
that's
kids.
really sad. Well, they're lucky to have a dad like you, that's for sure. Man.
Well, thank you very much for that. So that's kind of what kept me going throughout all of it, was not only my extended family, but certainly the obligations that I had to my kids. And I strongly held on to the fact that, she would come back, my daughter would come back into my life when the good Lord, wanted that happen. And she fortunately was old enough to see when she was living with mom that there was something not right.
Yeah.
And it was, the medications and the withdrawal, because she would start and stop the medications as she began to look for employment. And I would continue to have access to her pharmacy claims until we got divorced, so I could watch the roller coaster of stopping and the starting, and I would be able to see all of her little medical trips to various people. So I had full access to it and never fully realized what I had access to until.
Well, it's a good thing you had that. I mean, who knows where it would have gone without that?
Yeah, and that's what I say to people too when they ask. On several other podcasts, they're like, why'd you stay in the marriage? And I don't have a solid answer for it.
I mean, I was going to hit on that because as I read it, the little bits that I have, I mean, you fought like hell. I mean, it almost gets me emotional because I've been there.
Yeah.
And the value of what your beliefs are in a marriage. I mean, you weren't, it's too easy these days. People just toss it aside and say next. I mean, marriage is tough. It doesn't matter who you're married to,
Yeah.
So I saw that. I mean, and you fought like crazy, and so it's apparent the value you have in family and your commitments and everything else.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that I hung in there, because that herpes card may never have been played. It may never have been played, and had that not been played, and again, that was God intervening. I'm certain of it. And He was finally saying, "Okay, son, you've had enough.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you off this. You've been locked up. You've had the cops called on. You've been misdiagnosed. You've been abused and abused and abused. Enough's enough." But had she not played that card, I don't know where I'd be today, Steve. So truly, that's what people say. It's called a gift. It's like, yeah, it was a gift.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's, life, like I said, is very tough, but it's only the dark times where we grow and actually where the gifts come from. As soon as we learn to, as hard as they are, man, learn to look inside at it and understand that it's there to bless us. It's there for us to grow if we'll only just look to find them, and oftentimes it's much easier to just sit there and sit in the victim stance and, say, poor me. But, like you, I definitely believe in God, and He's just refining us. He's just trying to make us who we're meant to be. So.
Well, and I commend you for what you've made it through as well. So, we've talked about your story. So I commend you for that. And I'm inspired by a lot of folks like yourself and Nate and others that I've talked to and been on their podcasts, and they share their stories. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. Inspirational to talk to folks like yourself to really recognize the power of faith and strength to be able to get through some stuff. But yeah, as soon as you get down into that victim mentality, things are over.
Oh, big time.
So I'm not going to say there weren't days when I didn't wallow in self-pity, but I tried to make those as brief as possible.
Yeah.
And he would remind me along the way too, that, by putting other people in my life that had far worse scenarios and situations that they were dealing with.
Amen.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I got a letter when I was in prison, and I've shared this on other podcast of mine. I believe that there was a lady that was just friends with my mom, and I didn't know her. And about the second month in, I get a letter from her, and she consistently wrote me, but it's like her second or third letter. And I'm telling you, I was depressed as hell,
I can't imagine.
sitting there in federal prison, and was a guy who's been able to deal with life's twists and turns for the most part. All of a sudden I had one I couldn't deal with, and I got my family out there that I can't do anything to help. And that was brutal on me. But she sent me this letter, and it said in there, Steve, I don't know what it's like, and I will never profess to act like I know what it's like where you're at. But if you can end the day every day and just focus on 3 things that day you're grateful for, I promise you it'll help. I'm telling you, that changed everything.
Yeah.
Because when we're focused on gratitude, others, it's impossible to be depressed, angry, sad, unhappy, whatever. We just got to get out of ourselves. And that was really a turning point for me because I was, somewhat still saying poor me,
Yeah.
And holding on to the past and then continue to put those stories and buying into them only takes us deeper and deeper the wrong way. So, I mean, it seemed like you, even though it was brutal, you handled it really pretty well, considering.
Yeah.
What was it that, you really attributed that to? Did you always, been pretty positive? You always had a pretty good mindset?
Yeah, I think it was to your point though. I think it was my faith, but I also think it was gratitude. Without question, gratitude, saved my life. There were some days when you had to struggle to sit down and figure out, okay, what am I truly thankful for? And again, it was the blessings of my profession, my 2 kids, my extended family, the fact that my emotional health was now back on the mend. And I recognize that, I don't have, not that there's any stigma to it, but you recognize, okay, I'm not mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I realized that after spending 9 days in a psychiatric facility and living with it and seeing it up close, you go, okay, maybe I have some things I need to work on, but I certainly don't have bipolar. So
Yeah.
it was gratitude, and it was faith for sure.
Yeah.
And quickly moving beyond the concept of, questioning why me, and simply saying, hey, let your will be done, but continue to walk with me and put people in my life to walk with me. And I've had many, many, many people that walked with me and continue to walk with me. So the blessings abound for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a key. And I think, just like when, how quickly when you lose something, particularly what I'm referring to in prison, it only took me but hours to realize the things I took for granted, and how we even hurt those closest to us the most, not by choice necessarily, just we take them for granted. So we just kind of brush it off. We're not even consciously making that choice.
Yeah.
But, when you learn that, and I think there's too much of that, when it comes to God and our faith, it doesn't matter what your religious or spiritual beliefs are, whether it's God, it doesn't matter, Allah, supreme being, energy, who knows, whatever your beliefs are. I think that's what's missing today. We need more of that, because it's a brutal world out there, and it's only getting worse, it seems.
Yeah. And I don't know how folks, that don't have some type of belief get through it, to be honest with you.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
That my folks passed away a couple of years ago, 2 and 3 years ago. And I remember having that conversation with one of my kids. It's like, if I didn't have the faith to believe that I'd see them again, I don't know how people deal with death that don't believe that,
Or the understanding that they're in a better place. So
100%.
Yeah. Sadly, I lost my father during the height of my nightmare, and
oh geez.
Yeah, he had dementia and he had the inability to communicate. So I couldn't have a conversation with him about, what was going on. I vividly remember sitting at their picnic table in their backyard and sitting with my parents. And again, my dad couldn't communicate, but all my mother could do was point at my hand and, say he's no longer married,
Yeah.
and I could see the look in my dad's eyes, but he just didn't have the ability to communicate.
Yeah. I
So
understand.
yeah, so I lost him to dementia, and then about a year ago I lost my mom to dementia. But to
Wow.
your point, you've got to believe that they're in a much better place, and all of the every one of the cliches has come true. So you start thinking about everything happens for a reason. Well, I'm a firm believer in that.
No accidents.
Yeah, no,
No
absolutely
accidents.
not. Yeah. Uh-uh.
100%. I've been a firm believer of that most my entire life.
With the exception of free will, right? You take
Oh,
free will
sure.
out of the equation, and the
Yeah.
choices that some people make, that's on them. The choices I've
Yeah.
made in my life, that's on me,
Yeah.
and I'll be accountable for that. But aside from that, everything else
That's
happens for a
it's
reason.
like the author's at the tip of my tongue. You might know it. That book. He was a Navy SEAL, I believe. Extreme Ownership.
Oh, okay.
When I read that, it's like, damn, that and I believe it 100%. Everything we have in our life to this point, this moment right now, is 100% based on choices we've made, good or bad.
Yep.
And once you can look at things that way, it sure gives you a lot of power. You
Yeah.
know, like you see, your wife was doing a lot of things. You didn't know what you were getting into. You made the choice to go into a relationship. That's where it ended up taking you. That doesn't mean you made a wrong choice or everything, because there
Right.
were gifts, there were reasons for it, and you've obviously learned some. You'll probably learn more down the road. I think that's what's beautiful about life. And I think people that stop learning or just kind of put it on autopilot, man, they're just missing out on so much.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Depending on where things, yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to, to lay it down. And so I learned a lot just writing the book, and learned a lot about the whole publishing process and the book world in general. And, what I hope to do with it, with the proceeds from the book, is to be able to give back. I want to use it as a vehicle to give back to others, whether it's through the written word of hope and encouragement, maybe at the high water mark being, a little bit of inspiration, but ultimately down the road, Steve, I want to be able to support a couple of organizations that are dealing with former military with PTSD and substance abuse issues.
oh, dude, I don't know if I have one here. I have one in my home office. But yeah, I had a nonprofit that supported the troops, Bands for Freedom, back in 04 and 05. And tell you what, it was incredible journey.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, let me know, because I'd love to be a part of it.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's really driven by the fact that people say, were you in the military? And it's like, no, I wasn't in the military. My father was, but the individual that enabled me to get in front of Mascot Books is former military. And then at the height of my nightmare, a real good friend of mine who I lost touch with, his son was decorated military and came home stateside and took his own life at 26.
And people do not understand how many happen every day.
Yeah, 7,300 a year, right?
It's crazy. It's
20 to
absolutely
22 a
insane.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that, in fact, if I talk about it, I get fired up. But I wasn't military. My father was.
Yeah.
I was born on an Air Force base in California, and so we get into this nonprofit, and we just had a camel wristband that said freedom. And every time I made a donation, it was the Armed Forces Relief Trust. We were a 501c3, but we donated just directly to them. And so I would do check presentations, on morning shows, NBC affiliates throughout the country.
Yeah.
And one day we were in Jacksonville, Florida, and then I believe it was USS Kennedy aircraft carrier was coming back. So they took us down there. And man, when those military men and women and their families sitting there waiting, I can't even describe it. I still get goosebumps talking about it, because the energy, it was so thick in a good way that you could cut it with a knife, it felt like. And that's when I just was like, why in the hell do any of these people struggle when they have a family member serving our country to, protect us and our freedoms? It's just so backwards. It's frustrating.
What was the name of your foundation, or is the name of your foundation?
Bands for Freedom Foundation.
Bands for Freedom.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
It was pretty cool. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Is it still operational or no?
No. I wish I would have kept it going.
Okay.
But we generated all the funds. We didn't get a lot of donations. I mean, we did, but in exchange for bands, that's really what it was. But we donated over $250,000, in
Wow.
18 months.
That's
Um,
not
so
that's not a small feat. So
that was
congratulations.
it was pretty fun. In fact, this isn't about me. This is one check presentation right there. A big event in DC. That's Charlie Daniels, because he was he was the entertainment. But that's $100K right there. That check.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so it's those kind of things. I mean, I sense we're kind of cut from a similar cloth, and that's the kind of stuff that fulfills me. That's the kind of stuff that makes me. That's what makes life worth doing.
Yeah.
Is trying to make an impact on others. And
Yeah, and with this shift and with this disruption, there's an opportunity to kind of reestablish what is my purpose now going forward.
yeah,
With whatever days or years I've got left, what good can I do with it?
yeah. So you were in pharmaceutical sales for a long time. Are you still doing that?
I still am. I'm still doing that. Yeah, so
Okay.
I do that. It's my full-time job. Work for a pharmaceutical company. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 30 years, and then my part-time / other full-time job is promoting the book. So again, I self-funded it. It's daunting to walk into a bookstore and realize, man, there's millions and millions and millions of books out there, and everybody's got their story. So the opportunity to be on your show and on your platform and all the other podcasts I've done, I'm more than grateful for that. So it's not lost on me.
Yeah, we'll push it for sure. So 2 more questions. So for the
Sure.
person out there that's, maybe in the middle of that struggle, it could be as simple as because of COVID, work issues, whatever. It doesn't have to be addiction, indictment. It doesn't have to be similar to yours and be in a psychiatric ward, whatever darkness somebody's dealing with, what's the number one thing that you would tell them to focus on?
I would say,
I know the answer.
if they don't have somebody in their life that they can talk to or lean on, find somebody. There's plenty of support groups out there, but find somebody out there that just to listen to you. Then recognize that they're not going to solve your problems, but they're at least give you a shoulder to lean on a little bit. And then I think the other pieces we already touched on is fight your way through to find a way every day to find something to be grateful for, in your life. Whether it's health, whether it's your employment, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whatever. Far more people are in dire straits than we are. So recognize that.
Yeah.
Recognize that.
Yeah. That's powerful. And I think, one thing I learned is when I went through my situation, when I got indicted and stuff, it was one of those deals where I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't embarrassed. I knew the situation. I often joke and say, through my addiction, I definitely did things that could have put me in prison. This conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud, that was all whatever, but it was a gift because I needed that time out, even though it was bullshit and horrible. You gain perspective really quickly when you lose the things that you care about most.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, I always say it was a blessing. It was crazy, stupid, a joke, but it was a blessing. So I believed it happened because it needed to.
Yeah.
And so it was, yeah. So, but then as far as sharing when it happened, not sharing truth or not true, that didn't have anything to do with it. I live by the motto that for those that know me, no explanation is necessary. For those that don't, no explanation will be good enough. And just in situations like what you went through, anybody's going through, those people that are the naysayers and talking smack are reflecting just like your wife was reflecting to you.
Yeah.
And
they're filling their insecurities by throwing stuff at you. Yeah.
Once you can understand and grasp that, none of the trolls online, none of the people that are talking smack, they love seeing people that are successful crash if they're not, because they're insecure about it. So once you can own that, it just changes everything.
What did Lou Holtz had a great quote years ago. He said, when it comes to problems, 90% of people don't care, and 10% are glad you have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then I believe it's Ed Milet that says things don't happen to us; they happen for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
So it's just perspective, man.
Yeah.
You've got a phenomenal perspective. So I really respect. Thank you.
Likewise. Yeah.
So now what, you're still in pharmaceutical business. You've got the book. We're going to be promoting that. what else do you see in your future?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I guess as everybody talks about, right, you got to visualize it. So ultimately, I commend you for what you've done. I would like to create a foundation, create some type of foundation endowment fund that could be ongoing to find worthy causes to support. So I've already done a fundraiser with a women's shelter already too, out of Pennsylvania, for abused and homeless women. So I'm doing a book fundraiser with them where I'm giving a percentage of the proceeds back to them. So I'm looking for
awesome.
I'm looking for opportunities to do kind of collaborative marketing around the book. Um, you know, and I'm hoping to look for other opportunities like that. So
That's great. Well, yeah, we'll have to have a conversation off air.
that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to do it.
Well, awesome, man. I appreciate your time. Where can people find the book and purchase the book?
They can purchase the book directly from my website, thirdgift.com. The Third Gift that domain was taken. So it's thirdgift.com. There's a direct link on there. It's certainly available on all your other major online retailers. They can follow me or find out more about the book on not only my website, but also my Facebook page at The Third Gift. I'm on Instagram at The Third Gift, and my social media lady has got me on TikTok. So I'm on TikTok at The Third Gift, and wasn't on any of these social media platforms until this. And that's been an education in and of itself, just the reach with these platforms. So I'm on all the major social media platforms. So.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. So I'll have all that in the show notes, of course. So those of you that missed it, you don't need to rewind. You can just look in the show notes and pick up those links. Follow JD and pick up his book, The Third Gift. It's quite the story, and he's only touched on a very little bit of it. So appreciate your time, JD. Any of those out there that are struggling, whether you're a little down, depressed, whatever it is, go grab a free ebook that'll help you with your mindset and your happiness. That's at mindsetisthekey.net. And appreciate that. Hope everybody has a fantastic day. JD, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.